Hello there! Exclamation point. With Star Wars Outlaws punching well above its weight on Switch 2, presumably due to the console's ray tracing grunt and the game's reliance on quote-unquote forced RT, do we finally have an example that will get the haters to understand that ray tracing is the future? When even hardware this outdated can make a current-gen game run and look this good, with ray tracing, why would anyone light a game the old way anymore? Between the gains on the dev side and the performance, see also Doom the Dark Ages, Switch 2 port when, hopefully the anti-RT crowd is running out of legs to stand on it. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Anyway, and that was indeed from Brawler Yukon. This one from Pomps. Hey gents! Exclamation point. Given the competent RT performance in Outlaws on Switch 2, what are your expectations for Indiana Jones since they both require RT? What do you think there, Alex? Because I don't think the concept of a good Switch port for Star Wars Outlaws is going to convince any of the people that don't particularly want quote unquote forced ray tracing. That it's going to make any difference to them, really. But certainly from a developer side, the concept that they were able to get it running is actually quite impressive. Mm-hmm. I'd say that there are, I wouldn't say it's not so much Star Wars Outlaws that suggests we're going to get a Doom port, but more the fact that we're getting Indiana Jones.
Right.
But what do you make of all of this?
Well, I mean, one thing I want to say, though, is that I have now loaded it up, and I will say the compromises are kind of obvious when you look at it in some ways. Like, if you just sit that's why Oliver started his video out talking with lighting stability, because it is kind of a bit lower than it is on other platforms. So, like, if you just hit the camera still, you can see, like, of all the light kind of moving around sometimes.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm known for this at Digital Foundry. And so that is one thing, like it is not without showing in what you're seeing on screen. So like when someone says maybe it punches above its weight, you have to take the fact that it isn't the exact same thing, that you're looking at. But I would say from a developer standpoint, the fact that they took a game which I would say struggles at 60 on current gen in some ways, like in terms of where it has to go down to for image quality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like that is a heavy game at some point. And then they managed to dial things enough to get it to 30 on Switch 2. I think that gives a lot of developers like hope and chance that they could maybe attempt something similar with their franchise game, whatever it may be. And in that case, we're going to maybe start seeing more tailored versions of games that they make like a version of their GI or whatever it may be that is specifically for like ultra low ray count. Not ultra low res. It's actually surprisingly similar res to like the Xbox Series S version, right? But ultra low ray count. And I think that's really cool because that's where RT effects become really interesting because they actually need like a base minimum amount to look fine enough. And that's like a battle. And I would like to see what kind of cool techniques are derived from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's really impressive they even did it on handheld mode.
Right.
I think ultimately though, one of the reasons why you're getting RT on Star Wars Outlaws is because you couldn't do it without it, really, could you?
No.
The whole engine's built around, similar to Doom, you wouldn't be able to run Doom without ray tracing. What do you think there, John?
I mean, like you said, when talking about this whole Doom kind of thing, I do wonder, like, I feel like 60 FPS is off the table for that engine, even on Switch 2, but you never know, right? Mm-hmm. They can always surprise, and we'll see what happens there. There is always a chance that 60 FPS is on the table. So I'm certainly going to be watching this very excitedly to see where it goes from here. But I think what we're kind of seeing is just that ray tracing necessarily isn't like a giant bottleneck here for the Switch 2. Right.
It's a challenge.
And that's it's a challenge, but it's not. There are other bottlenecks that are more serious, I would say, that are more limiting than the RT side of things, which is good because, I mean, I think it still shows that the RT cores in Ampere here are quite efficient, that even when like clocked down to this level, it's basically been hobbled down to this point. It's still performs quite well. So it's definitely cool to see. But I think, and I think it's important for multi-platform games. Like that's the main thing, is I'm kind of relieved by this, because as we know, when you go all in on ray traced lighting, for instance, like, and you opt not to do a fallback, that can kind of determine where you're developing the game for. And if Switch 2 couldn't support RT, it might influence developers to just throw out this notion of going with a full RT path, right? Because then they say, well, we need to bring this to Switch, which means then we have to do a fallback solution as well, which adds a lot to the budget and time.
Yeah.
I think that's why we will see stuff like Resident Evil 9 on Switch 2 versus PS4. Because I think on Switch 2 they can do the full RT, which is how they're building the game, whereas something like a PS4 version would require a separate path to run, right? And that, that's not free. That's not a simple thing, actually. So that I see as good news, that yes, it'll be scaled down, but at least the hardware can support it properly. And by the way, have you seen videos of what people have done on the Steam Deck where they turn off all the ray tracing in Outlaws?
Oh yeah, I have.
It's quite humorous. It's like they're just running it in full bright mode with like no lighting, and it's hideous, but it's hilarious at the same time. So it really shows, though, that everything in that game world is completely lit by the ray tracer, right?
Yeah.
And when you turn that off, there's no lighting. It's just like everything is one color, basically.
But what about Pomp's question here? Expectations for Indiana Jones. It was interesting that at the Gamescom reveal, there was kind of like just some generic footage, which was running at 60 frames per second. But
right.
Yeah, I think 30 is sort of obvious compromise, right?
I mean, I was just saying, I think that it'll probably be 30, but it's id Tech, right? Like I think there's a better chance this time that they could reach 60 than it was with Switch 1 reaching 60.
Well, yeah.
With id Tech 6 stuff and 7, right?
Right.
But you're probably right, and especially here, I think they would probably rather do 30, especially for Indiana Jones, given that Indy, I think, would probably work fine at 30 FPS. Doom the Dark Ages, I mean, it'll work at 30 FPS, but I'm curious to see, like, if id itself, for instance, decided to do a port, would they be willing to compromise on performance this time? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they could always potentially consider 40 on handheld. That's the other thing that was great about Star Wars Outlaws, right? They ran the screen at 120 hertz, meaning low frame rate compensation, which is kind of just surprising that very few other people did.
They made all the right choices, right? Yep. And I think that's key, and that's why it's important to sort of highlight what the game did, because it sort of shows the way as far as best practices for this stuff.
Right.
So I hope other developers take note of the positive reaction to this.
Yeah. Any final points there, Alex?
Yeah, with Indiana Jones, I do think it'll be 30, just because there are, like, when you get to the Giza area, like, there's quite a lot going on there. That'd be really hard to imagine at higher frame rates, given the CPU in question. But one thing I think is, given how it works, and they're not doing a specular tracing at all, really, I think it'll probably be more stable lighting than what we see in Star Wars Outlaws. That's one thing I'd imagine, actually, the truth.